1, 2, 3. I'll find it. You always look really happy about it. I'm pretty sure I clapped like a week ahead of you then.
How you doing, dude?
Yeah, I'm really good. I think the whole clocks going forward, spring forward, and all that sort of stuff. I feel good about it. More light in the evening. Yeah, I think the older I get, the more sort of what is it? Seasonal affective disorder, SADS.
Oh yeah.
Really starts to play on me. But I think having
that used to hit me bad when we first met, when we were both in retail, and we'd be doing like back of house early shifts this time of year, or well ahead of this time of year, like winter time more. That thing of being in to start by 7 and leaving at 3 or 4, and it's dark again, and it used to hit me so bad that it's one of those things that when you're a kid you kind of like, oh, it spells sad and you're a bit sad. Yeah, it's not that bad, but then rhymes. But then when you get a bit older, you're like, do you know what? I really value those couple hours of daylight.
Yeah, I think when it takes over like most of your time as well, like you're in work quite a lot of time, like a lot of the time. It affects you. Like it builds up. Yeah. But, so I'm in a really good positive. It's a good time of year now where it's like, regardless of everything else that's going on in the world, which is we're all very much aware of it. It's the potential for the year to come. Like you've still got loads of time to make the plans for whatever you want to do. You're not like running out of time. It's all there up for grabs, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But what about you? You feeling good?
Yeah, I'm good. On the subject of spring, we've done some spring cleaning in the past week. Whenever you listen to this, at some point in the past. On Instagram, basically, instagram.com/DRHPod. We've had a bit of a revamp of the socials for the 3rd or 4th time. We're sticking with it this time, I promise. But yeah, it's just our little spring clean. We've neatened up the format. It's technically more work for me now, in terms of we've got a template, we've got a style that I'm trying to follow, and there's certain things I'm trying to do, but it feels like less work because it's that thing of, do you know what? Let's make it nice and focused. Nice and clear. So I've got limits that I have to work within, which kind of speeds things up a little bit. And there's been some really good feedback, because a lot more comments, a lot more interaction on stories. So if you don't already, please do follow us on there. That's where you can tend to talk to us throughout the week. And we'll try to do a bit more interactive stuff on there, like giveaways and things, because we're coming up to a few milestones as well. The time of recording this, I think we're now 20 downloads away from 500 on audio. Pretty good in 2 months.
Yeah, I think that's really good.
Anyone who's been from the start, we did this really backwards. And if you're listening on audio, although that should be the first place we started, it wasn't. So it feels nice. Yeah,
screw convention, Lou. let's not do it by halves. Let's really jump in.
And the same for YouTube as well. So if you're watching on YouTube, please hit subscribe, hit like, comment below. Even if we've not asked a question, just comment. Tell me how unflattering this angle is. Tell me how bad my posture is when I'm doing the pod for some reason, when it's dead good normally. All that is good. All interaction is good interaction. If you want to troll me, troll me. I'm letting you know now. Keep it clean, but don't hurt me too much.
You might regret that, mate. I don't know if you know, but the internet can be savage sometimes.
Oh, no.
I really hope that's not news to you. But yeah, no, it's interesting what you said about having like parameters to hit. I think sometimes having like carte blanche is almost more difficult, even though you'd think it'd be better. I could do whatever I want. It's like, no, actually having some limits, it is quite good.
Yeah.
And actually, I might have crowbarred that, but it actually works into what I've been sort of watching and consuming recently. So nice. I've hit the MCU again from the start.
Do you know when I said let's not tell each other what we've been doing or watching? We've really synced up. Go on.
So basically, it all comes from The Mandalorian, really. I mean, tentative steps with Stranger Things, watching that with my other half, and we want to watch stuff in the evening or whenever. You don't have to watch stuff in the evening. It's not law. But you want to make sure that both of you are enjoying, what you're watching. You're both invested in it, especially if you're going to hit like, a long running series or a movie from, the MCU that can take up quite a lot of time. So we watched Stranger Things, really liked it. Mandalorian came around. My missus is not a massive Star Wars fan. Watched The Mandalorian, loved it. Subsequently watched all the Star Wars. Then gone back into season 2 of Mandalorian. And then WandaVision. happened, and she watched that. She did really well to keep up, considering she's not watched all the MCU movies.
Oh, she hadn't watched them at that point, had she? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oof.
But I couldn't say to her, let's watch all the MCU movies and then watch WandaVision, because that's a lot for her to, take on if she wasn't going to like it.
Yeah, yeah.
So then we started watching all the movies, and you know what? I'm enjoying them this time round way more than I enjoyed them the first time.
Yeah.
And I think mainly because there's a lot more of them than obviously when you're watching them like trickle fed one at a time. And I think you end up going back. Like, I remember watching the Iron Man films loads and loads of times. I mean, they're really good films, but they've not got the same feel and structure to the latest, Avengers movies and stuff like that, and how the format kind of goes. And we just finished the first Ant-Man movie. We're watching them in order, and watching like the post-credit stings and everything, and how they all. I think having that forward information, knowing that you've seen those movies that are to come, I don't think it takes anything away from them. If anything, it commits in stone like what's going to happen. I think they're really good. I mean, Age of Ultron got a bit of a kicking regarding how it was received. I have a massive love for that movie now.
Yeah, new appreciation with knowing that there's more fallout from not even just in the films, but with WandaVision specifically. Yeah, there's a lot explored.
That death of Quicksilver. When I watched it originally, I was like, "Oh, that's a bit gutting. He's a cool character, good actor." Are we going to see more of this? Granted, it's a comic book film, so there's always chances for someone to come back. But then having seen WandaVision now with the whole stuff that we talked about with Quicksilver, that death in Age of Ultron, it hit me like more than it ever did the first time. I mean, granted, the acting is really good, and it's the bit between Hawkeye and you didn't see that coming. That the 3 times it's said, and it could that again. We've talked about this before. How in other situations, certain lines or certain set pieces could be really cheesy and really pantomimey. But and
there's a lot of dancing on that line in the MCU and
massive.
Yeah.
But I think they took it right up to the line on that particular line. And really, it really hit home. I think it's a great movie.
I can tell you why as well. Good actor, doing good acting.
And that's our episode, guys. Next time we'll be.
I was going to say Age of Ultron. There's some stuff. This is one of the films. I watch a lot of video essays and a lot of stuff on YouTube. Read stuff on Filmstagram, whatever. I like to read about stuff because I'm pretentious, but. One of the
that's minus 1 point, isn't it?
One of the things I've noticed have a bit of a resurgence in the last couple of years, which I'll seem to mention one of these every week, but is Age of Ultron, and people similar to yourself having a new appreciation for it, and something that I honestly did think this before that, but I've noticed in a couple of good essays and good videos about, is the scene with the Avengers just together, just at the party, chilling out, having fun, having a few drinks. Then it's everyone try and lift Mjolnir, and then Cap, it nudges, and then you see Thor and there's
stuff
so
between Natasha and Bruce at the bar.
Yeah.
It's a really memorable scene within the MCU, and I think because it's not that it comes from nowhere. It's not that stuff's not really in a lot of the films. Yeah. Especially in the Avengers films. So that scene being in there almost feels like a very, foot's being slammed on the brakes. You're very aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
And I can't make up my mind whether or not is it a really obvious production gear shift that they want to get those more human. Because it's all great having those action set pieces, but would you watch a film that was just back to back action set pieces? Like the death of Quicksilver wouldn't matter if we didn't care about him as a character. The relationship between Natasha and Bruce, they have a lot of within the big set pieces, little bits between them and stuff, and they are only made better and stronger because of those out of action relationship sort of creating moments.
There was a conscious shift from Whedon and from the studio in general that in the second one they wanted not just those little quippy moments back and forth, but they wanted to see the heroes interacting with humans and saving people in the middle of the disaster. So that's one element that plays into it.
Yeah.
But I do also think, like you say, that gear shift and that moment of almost putting the brakes on, that is Whedon. That's his kind of take these larger than life characters, take these godlike superpowered people, take these super soldier, John Wick style spies, and just give them a beer and let them sit around and have a chat and relax for a moment. And it plays into the story because the idea is, in the creation of Ultron, they hope to be able to put the brakes on a little bit and say, well, this will take care of things. Obviously, it all goes wrong. Who would have thought in a big action film? But it's definitely something. And I think what you said about a lot of the MCU, there's lots in there that I think people will enjoy the second time round. Like Ant-Man, when it came out, was quite divisive from what I remember. And again, this is just little bits of media and little bits of social media that you see. It doesn't necessarily actually reflect the fan base. But there was always that lot of talk around like, oh, it's not quite as epic as the other stuff. Or like Doctor Strange, like, oh, it's just Iron Man again. It's a template. And it's like, yeah, but that's not a bad thing. Yeah. It's taken, like you say, the reason some of the earlier things are sometimes a little more difficult to watch is the same reason why it still works later on, in that they really found a template and found a format. And what we're doing at the moment, they found those barriers within the content to say, let's work within this to set something up, because it works. And
I think as much as they have found those barriers and those templates that they, for the formula that works for them, I'd also like to think that, they're only sticking with that up until the point that it stops working, and then they'll shift it up. And I think we spoke about this when it was the second, it was second season of Mandalorian, and how it hadn't carried on with the same energy as the final of the first season. But we weren't saying that was a negative. It's like, well, you've got to do that, otherwise every episode or every bit would just be like on this high octane level all the time. And as an audience member, you'd just be like, oh, you can't, there's no like peaks and troughs anymore. Where can you go? And I think things like the Ant-Man films, it becomes more localized. It's a smaller story. It's not this, potentially with the Yellow Jacket, it could, change warfare and therefore, the world potentially. Whereas the Avengers films are more, no, we're in that fight right now. Yeah. It is changing. So I think from a sort of, like I said, peaks and troughs reasoning, it is a really good film, and I really liked Ant-Man from the beginning. And I think
I remember we used to speak about that at the time, about like, why is it not more loved? It's Ocean's 11 with superpowers. It's it's a heist. It's comedy. It's cool. It's Paul Rudd. It's Paul Rudd.
Who doesn't like Paul Rudd?
It's Paul Rudd with a pretty nice body. I'm just gonna throw it out there. He got pretty jacked for it. I mean, everyone does in the end, but
Yeah, that's your Marvel / Disney money, chefs, workout. Yeah, that's good.
One question as well. It kind of linked to that. Are you finding that some of those origins or like Guardians, for example, the more siloed stories, are you finding those in a way are a little bit easier to revisit because they're not always necessarily a setup for the next film, or they're not part of the big story? It's kind of like you could give someone Ant-Man and say, here's one of the fun superheroes, or you could just stick that on and think, I don't have to start getting too invested. Do you know what I mean?
I think you've hit like a really interesting point there, is that we've gone into this, me and my dad, to watch all the MCU, but I think there's certain films that almost read like a part 1 and part 2 or part of a bigger story, and I'd like to think that within the minds that are in charge of it all, that they've plotted through their the phases, films that will 100% tie into the next one or a bigger story, and other ones that are just like, oh no, these are our heroes within that bigger story, but this is a localized story, and they've plotted certain ones along that way.
Try and space it out a little bit.
Yeah. And I think things like Guardians works on multiple levels. One, it's a localized story, but also inadvertently it shows us how big out there actually is. that they're not really that bothered what's going on Earth. It's so far away from what they're up to.
Yeah.
But then also does tie into it. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it, and I did worry at first, like, thinking, because there is so many films and there's so many hours to watch, that was it going to feel a bit of a slog? And at first we did watch, like, one, then a few days later watch another, but we watched Age of Ultron and then went straight on to the next one afterwards. So
nice.
Like, I'm really enjoying it. I think I'm going to go with what I said at the beginning. I think I'm actually enjoying it this time round way more than the first time round.
That's good.
Yeah.
My question, who's the main character, Cap or Iron Man? I know that's unfair.
Up till Age of Ultron, it's Iron Man.
Yeah.
He's had more films, and in the films that he's not the title on the title card, he's still the big one. And I think WandaVision for me has just kind of really reset my view of the whole MCU.
Yeah. And
like, you see these things online, like, you've got $15, pick your Avengers team, the top row of $5, and you've got next row of $3, bottom row's $1, and you've got, like, your Luke Cages on the bottom and stuff like that, street level, then you've got mid level, and you've got top level like Iron Man and all that, and Wanda's on the top one. And the answer for me is, well, I just need Wanda and Cap, and then the rest of the money I'll use for snacks. Like, you don't. There's certain things where you look at Cap and go, oh, he's just a strong guy, but then you look at the Hulk and he's stronger, and it's like, Cap's power is not his physical prowess. Cap's power is he's got a massive heart. It's a defect. He will always line up with truth and honesty and integrity and humanity, and that's his biggest thing, and that's why he should be the leader. And even Tony makes that joke about going, I just build everything and pay for everything, but he's the leader, because at the end of the day, he will sacrifice himself, and we know that he will, because he did. Like, do you know what I mean?
So Iron Man up to Ultron, and then from that point on, you feel like it definitely shifts towards Cap. And again, this isn't definitive, like, everyone should reassess the way they view the films, but I have a similar feeling of, although Iron Man's, like, takes focus and takes light in that early run, I think for me, Cap is the humanity, and that's not to say that Iron Man or Tony doesn't get there, because he does, and that's part of his journey, is going from the over the top, smarmy douche, cool guy, to there is a lot of heart there. Taking Spider-Man in and having this younger protege under his wing and all of that. Yeah. But yeah, I do. I actually feel like I change my mind slightly on each time I revisit. Not even the whole thing. Even I'll watch a couple of the films in succession, and I'll start to reframe it. Like you say, like you watch WandaVision, you reframe it again, you go, yeah, these are gods. Like at this point, I love Hawkeye. I'm a Hawkeye apologist, but these are gods. Yeah. I can see why people go. I know he can lift and he can jump around and that, but
Yeah, it's weird. I do struggle with the character of Hawkeye. Not the acting or anything like that. Just the actual character of, like, really, he's an Avenger. I mean, I'd be tapping up Luke Cage before.
Well, yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Indestructible skin.
Yeah.
Pretty decent, that.
Yeah. I mean, it does suffer. Some of the earlier films do suffer from, like 90s classic sort of action tropes where, flames blowing up in the background, the cool walk away, or the shot without even looking. Or purposely looking away before you do the shot. It's like, that's more work. Like, I don't understand.
Yeah, don't take the risk. That. You're meant to be a hero.
Yeah. But yeah, so they're what I've been watching. They kind of take up a lot of time, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not a quick one. Book if you're gonna do like a movie marathon, book a couple of days off work, or whatever you need to do. So quite appropriately, what I've been up to, funnily enough, is revisiting from a similar period, the Avengers comics, and specifically Jonathan Hickman, one of our favourite writers, his run, which I think we've spoken about him every 2 or 3 episodes at this point, because I've mentioned I'm getting into his revamp of the X-Men at the moment, but part of that is rereading his run on Avengers, which I've probably read at least in bits a couple of times now, a few times, but there's just something about certain periods of Avengers comics where you don't have to have as much backstory to get into it as like X-Men, for example, and it's not always as throwaway or as siloed as like a Fantastic Four, which again is not a criticism to either, but for me the Avengers comics within the Marvel books always, for the most part, always seems to hit that nice balance of there'll be a few runs of stories where it's 2 or 3 issues long and it's quite quick and it's not all the usual lineup you're expecting. There might be a few new characters or random characters and it's fine.
You see, that's what I think is one of the best things about the Avengers as an entity.
Changing rosters.
Which I didn't really get as a kid. But when you get older, like especially having just watched Age of Ultron, I know I've gone back into the movie version of it, is it literally at the end, it's almost a complete new lineup. Yeah. And then when you start thinking of the Avengers as like that, it's a good mechanism, both in the comics and in the movies, to make whole like gear shifts into different directions and explore something that that roster can't do. But you had this person, and suddenly going off in this direction makes way more sense for them.
Yeah, exactly. And then at the same time, the bit that I've specifically just read is the Infinity Saga, which obviously was there to sort of introduce people to the idea of Thanos and Infinity Stones and that universe-wide battle, as in like, I know we keep saying we're trying to save the world, but at this point we're trying to save reality. It's at that point.
Well, that's it. Like the street level stuff kind of like disappears when you've got to save the world, and then world stuff kind of disappears when you've got to save the fabric of reality.
Yeah, exactly. And it's made me want to start jumping back into other runs on the Avengers as well. Like you've got.
Oh, that's good.
You've got like the Brian Michael Bendis stuff. From like the 2000s, for example, with like New Avengers and Mighty Avengers, and again, that's when you start to see a lot more of people like Spider-Man, Spider-Woman, and other characters coming into it and playing a part. And then I'm like, right, okay, well, if I'm going to do that, I might as well go back and start reading the George Perez and Kurt Busiek era from the 90s and the 80s, and there's something about the Avengers as a book that it is as good and as bad as you remember. In all the best ways.
Okay.
I mean, the Jonathan Hickman stuff, there isn't really anything on the so bad it's good side. It's all really solid. We've spoken here before about some people get a little bit with Hickman's writing of, there's a lot of kind of setup and I don't always know what it's to, and there's lots of thinking, but it always pays off. There's a bit of that, but it's a really cool like series. He's got the complete editions out at the moment, which collects Avengers and New Avengers, which were both running at the same time, and Avengers covers like the team, so you've got like Cap and the sort of the more normal roster just fighting monsters and that, and then you've got New Avengers, which is your likes of Black Panther, Namor, Professor X, Richard Reed, and it's the Illuminati, and it's the group of like, these are the kind of the minds behind all the heroes, and they're actually dealing with stuff that the regular roster don't even know about. And so you've got this nice balance of two things going on, and sometimes actually they're at odds with each other of what they're trying to do. So,
but that really definitely comes out in the Age of Ultron. How you've got the whole setup that's going on. But then there's even like the smaller level stuff where Falcon is talking to Cap at the party, and he's like, "Oh, you're not getting in on this," and he's like, "Oh, it's a bit above my pay grade, mate, but I'm still looking into that missing persons thing. Remember?" And it's like, oh, and it's little things like that they throw in that I really love. The idea that, oh, why can't Tony just come in and sort all this out? Because of things like that, it at least alludes to the fact that Tony can't be there because he's off doing something else. It's not he's sat home or just he missed the call or something. So it's that world building thing
in that run as well. That in the comics at the time, Tony was literally off world with the Guardians of the Galaxy. Because it was also at the time when Marvel shifted to the comics, where, and this isn't a criticism again, it could be seen as a bit of a cynical thing of, well, we're just going to focus on the books that we know either are or will be in the films, and introduce people to the characters and set them up. So they did like a new Guardians of the Galaxy roster and that kind of thing. X-Men took a bit of a backseat. Fantastic Four took a bit of a backseat, unless it was part of other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it actually really works because, like you say, it gives you that idea of, yeah, we get it. Hulk can just, smash through a planet. So every time something goes wrong, let's throw the Hulk at it. Yeah, but doesn't mean Bruce Banner's thinking, yeah, just keep doing that. He's got his own inner demons to deal with. Iron Man can't just build his way out of it, because that's literally what happens in Age of Ultron in the film, and it goes wrong. You can't always, on the DC side, like, oh, Superman can hear everything and see everything. Superman can beat anyone. It's like, yeah, but he's also trying to put out fires and do this and do that. And it's not. It's
funny
not as easy as that.
When you mention that thing of like, I remember very, very clearly having a conversation with someone about Superman being able to hear and see like everything.
Yeah.
So he has to edit what things that he does do and doesn't do. And then people are like, "Oh God!" So actually, you could make the argument he's a bit of a bastard, like who he helps and who he doesn't help.
Yeah.
And it's like, imagine hearing all crimes all the time, knowing you can only do so much.
Yeah.
How is he not cracked?
Yeah.
Like he basically lives through torture all the time.
Yeah.
Like, wow. I was gonna say we're lucky. Like he's oh, there he is. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
They're lucky he hasn't gone. He hasn't gone dark. Like,
no, he has. You got to read the right books.
Yeah, but not. Yeah, but I mean, as a default setting, like,
main continuity. Yeah, lucky he's not just an absolute psycho.
Yeah, because that'd be game over. That wouldn't it? Wouldn't it really?
If you're new to comics, or if you're thinking, I kind of want to read a bit more now that I've seen films, which book should I start with character? There's quite a few runs on within the Avengers, certain time periods or certain writers, where it's a nice, a year or 2 years worth of books to say, give that a read. Some of it will reference stuff that you don't know about. Some of it you'll be like, I've never even heard of this character. And some people who are into comics will be reading some of the Avengers runs and going, I've not heard of this character. But they will all.
Sometimes I love those characters more though when you don't know them. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Something so
this is nice.
Like whether it's new to the comic or just new to you, it's nice discovering something like that and going down that road, going, no idea what's going to happen here with this person.
Exactly, and but there's always enough characters or content in there that you have enough periphery knowledge through the zeitgeist, through osmosis. You have absorbed knowledge about Captain America, Iron Man, Hawkeye, Black Widow, Thor. You're aware of these characters, so if there's 2 or 3 of them dotted in there with a load of new ones, there's still enough for you to, even based on how Cap reacts to certain characters, I've got an idea about that character then. Whether they're a bit of an anti-hero, whether they're just goody two-shoes, whether they're new. There's enough there, and like I say, there's also enough balance of creature of the week type stories combined with Infinity Saga. The universe is going to end. Yeah, there's enough for both.
And with that idea, the films do line up with that. Yeah. You could almost argue that your Guardians of the Galaxy, they, the first one definitely could be, that could be considered your Creature of the Week episode, or issue. Sorry, and your Ant-Man, is a Creature of the Week issue.
Yeah.
I mean, they all do link back, but the people in charge of this, they know what they're doing, and obviously
they're half decent, Disney and Marvel.
This is not their first outing. I have watched something else, New Girl. So I've been watching it for quite a while, but we finished it, so I'm not going to watch anymore because it's done. Have you watched New Girl? Do you like it? Have you seen it? Do you know anything about it?
I've watched at least the first 2 seasons. Is there 6 seasons or 5 or 6? I don't think there's loads, but I think there's more than people realise.
I think there is. There's a little bit of a time jump in the last season.
Right.
Not massive. It's only 3. I think it's 3 years. Right. And it might actually be part way through a season. I can't remember. When you start binging stuff and watching it back to back,
it just lines up with a Thanos snap. They come back, and Schmidt's where have I been?
Yeah, shared universe. Weird that, but it works. but it kind of when I saw it 3 years later, I was like, oh, where's this going? But you know what? It was actually really nice because it showed these characters who aren't kids growing up. It just showed like, are they going to have achieved what they need to achieve, or are they not going to have achieved it? But you know what? They're happier in doing something else. Yeah. And it was actually quite a nice way to round it off. And some of the characters in it get massive character development in it. Like there's a character called like Nick in it, he works in the bar, but you find out that he actually, is a qualified lawyer, could practice if he wanted to, but he didn't want to, and all this stuff. And the argument is that he is a bit of a loser and hasn't really found his way. And he doesn't completely change that side of him, but he becomes successful in certain things of his life. And you go, oh, that's pretty good. I make the argument for New Girl that because it's called New Girl and Zooey Deschanel is the most well-known one in the show, at least at the beginning. Yeah. Unless you really like her, or let's go with the opposite. If you don't like Zooey Deschanel, you'd probably steer clear of this show. But actually, as much as she is the main character, she is one of the ensemble in the show. Some of the best moments are absolutely nothing to do with her. Yeah. Some of the best comedy parts, the jokes in it, are nothing to do with her. But then equally, the next scene over, she's being like fucking hilarious and stuff. So I think it's one of those weird marketing things of like, she's definitely going to get bums on seats for it. But in a way, you could almost argue that that's not the product that you're buying when you watch it. It's not just the Zooey Deschanel show. Yeah,
it's more. And again, speaking of someone who's probably seen less than half of the full run, at least in its entirety, again, one of those shows where the first season I maybe caught it part way through, watched a couple of episodes on like a 4OD or whatever terrestrial channel catch-up thing there is in the UK. And then I was like, oh, I really like this. I'll go back and I'll watch it from the start. And I maybe watch the first 2 seasons. And then since then, I've never been in a position where it's all been on the same subscription service at the same time or whatever, or I've not noticed that it is. But recently, and it's funny you bring this up, recently I've noticed it's dropped on a couple of the things that I subscribe to. And it's been in my mind of like, I watch so much sci-fi, fantasy, horror, epic, crazy stuff that this might be quite a nice little palate cleanser where, I've had a long day, been signed on late in work, or I've just been off my feet all day. I just want to watch something before bed that I can just watch a couple episodes nice and quick and just have a laugh, and that's the perfect thing. And it's,
brilliant. It definitely like ticks that box 100%.
I think certain channels or certain networks mismarketed it as this kind of like, I don't know, maybe like a modern Sex and the City or a modern Friends, and it's like it isn't. I get why they're saying that. It's this idea of like cool young people, young to middle-aged adults and metropolitan life, and it's all funny and quips. Never, I mean, even the unattractive ones are pretty good looking, and like Nick's like the loser and he's a bit schlubby but pretty handsome dude. Let's be honest, he's charming as anything. And it's actually these bits that I remember where I wouldn't say it's meta, but they definitely play with those tropes and those formats where the comedy is almost around the dynamic. And
because they even make a joke about how many people are living in the apartment at one point. Yeah, and it's like and I think there's one point where any sort of show will have your standard setup of like, generally the camera is here for the the kitchen shot. It's generally here for like hallway and stuff. And I think they leave it to the last episode when they go like, oh, we've never been to the end of this hallway. Like, you've been living there like 9 years or something. Like, you've never been to the end of the corridor. And what they actually mean is like, you've never been to the end of that corridor. But I really like there's 2 things that for me that are just like really, really good demonstrations of the show. Is the first, it's in a shared universe with Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which I'm a massive fan of. I didn't realise that. Oh. Yeah, so there's I think there's 2 crossover episodes in each of the shows.
All right.
Yeah, but
I don't remember the Brooklyn Nine-Nine one because I have watched all of that at least a couple of times now.
I think the first one is where Zooey Deschanel is picking up some soup for, I think it's for Schmidt. and she's driving around, and Jake Peralta from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, so they're in New York, commandeers her car during a chase.
Ah, okay.
And then he crashes the car. Spoiler. And then the next time it's when they go.
We've just lost half the audience now. We're down to one listener.
So Jess is driving the car. She's driving, I think it's Schmidt's mum's car.
Right.
And then and like, so she's trying not to like destroy the car, ends up spilling soup everywhere, crashing the car. But you see like Jake Peralta, and it's not even, Andy Samberg like in it as a cop. He's like, he's like, Detective Jake Peralta, I'm commandeering this vehicle. Like it's full on.
So in New Girl he does that.
Yeah, in New Girl,
Right.
Yeah, in New Girl. And at the end, I think he says something like, she says, what do we do about the car? And he says, you need to, go and claim it, at the 9-9. So it's not like it's just Sandberg being a copper.
That's nice, okay.
And then later on, they're all back in New York. I think they might be, I can't remember why they're there, and it's kind of irrelevant. But Nick and Winston need to get across New York, and they've spent all the money. They have this thing where they go to New York, they have like this like Billy Big Balls, like spend loads of money and have like lobster meals and all this, and they spend all their money, and they can't get on the subway to get anywhere. So they start busking, and Charles from Brooklyn Nine-Nine and his son turn up and watch this, and there's a whole scene of him watching, thinking they're going to do this amazing stunt, and they bring you up, and I think they actually go to the station at one point. Yeah. So the other thing I like about New Girl, and it's almost like the sort of the young 20-year-old that lives inside me wants to play this game called True American, and it's a drinking game that they play, and they never explicitly explain the rules in the game in the show. And it's normally when a new character's come into it who's like, a friend from out of town or something, and they say like True American, and they do like almost like a montage scene cut in between certain points in the game, and they'll all like put a number, and they'll have to do like a number on the head, and then people who match up with 3, it's like I'm a 3, and they're all like, oh no, I can't believe it, 2 3s, right? You're behind the Iron Curtain, and you're like, and then it cuts to the next bit, and as an audience member, you stood there going, what? And then it'll turn up to another bit where Winston's being pushed on like a little dolly, and all he does is like to the camera going, I'm coming to steal your gold, and then it cuts again. You're like, what is this game? The only rule that you definitely know is that the floor is lather.
All right, okay.
And I think post lockdown, I want to play it,
even though we don't know the rules and what we're actually meant to be doing.
Well, I think you're already meant to be a bit half cut when you're playing it. Oh, okay. So I think maybe not knowing the rules you'll probably win. But it's on my bucket list to find. No. I mean, it's 2021. Someone's definitely, there's multiple versions of the rules on. Yeah,
there's already a Cards Against Humanity expansion.
yeah, True American from New Girl.
Munchkin New Girl edition. Love it. So
that's basically the two, one massive mountain of the MCU, and then finishing off New Girl. And it's a shame actually when it finished. I was like, I really wanted more, which I think is a good sign of a good property. That it went out, it didn't fizzle out. I actually watched it all the way to the end because I enjoyed it.
See, I might have to. That might be the next time we're doing. What have you been watching? I think that might be mine now to rewatch. Try
and get back into it. You might come back and go, you know what, Charlie, you're full of shit.
Not that it means promotion from our side, but I recommend anyone who's into New Girl to watch Lamorne Morris, aka Winston, on Rick Glassman's podcast, Take Your Shoes Off, because they're really good friends, and he's really funny.
Oh, really?
And there's a lot of
I'll have to look into
there's a lot of gags added in the edit. There's a lot of clicking out, clicking back in, and all this, and Lamorne's really good at just leaning into improv and being silly, and also kind of playing as a character as himself on the pod, where he almost acts like he's this really arrogant, amazing actor who's just like women left, right, and centre and all this, and it's kind of like it's half true, but you know what I mean. That's one of those things that like it's
nice like what we do on this pod. Like in real life, we're really nice guys. Like we don't have.
Speak for yourself. I think to finish off, let's quickly touch back into the MCU. Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Well, I'm gonna burst your bubble here. I've not watched it. I've tried. I've definitely not watched it because I want experience your take on it on the very sort of snapshot
nice, okay.
response of him watched it.
Right, okay. So, without spoiling. Yeah, so the series is almost set up to, as though it's going to answer the question of, is Falcon going to take over as Captain America, or is Winter Soldier going to take over as Captain America? Obviously, both have done so in the comics. Falcon, there's a very clear argument to be made that he's Cap's new friend. He's his introduction to the world in the thing of the films. There's the diversity question or answer through him of, it's quite a positive step because of his race that he's representing America. He's the hero for the country, that sort of stuff. He's a vet, which obviously, especially in America, is a big thing.
Loves animals.
Yeah. Or Winter Soldier, who he's Cap's oldest friend. He's his original friend. He sacrificed himself for Cap at some point. He's almost missed out on years of friendship with Cap as well. And he is actually a super soldier. He's had a warped version of the serum and gone through training and all this. So you could argue, at least in terms of power level, he's got the ability to do what Cap can do. And the reveal, which again is not a spoiler, it's revealed in the trailers and the marketing stuff anyway, at the end of the first episode is, neither's Captain America. There's good reasoning why Falcon says he isn't, and he basically ultimately comes down to, the mantle of Captain America, that was for him, and I'm kind of myself, I'm doing my own thing, and I'm like, yeah, cool. And Winter Soldier in the series is battling with basically PTSD and depression and guilt and just, I've got to atone for my sins. A bit like Black Widow in some of the films of, I've got a ledger and I've got to wipe off a lot of red kind of thing, But then right at the end of the first episode, there's a really dull reveal of, we've got a new Captain America, and he's just called Captain America. It's not US Agent, which we've spoke about before, that it looks like, that's the thing, they're taking US Agent from the comics. No, he's just called Captain America. It's Kurt Russell's son, which is nice. That's a nice little link to the MCU and into the wide universe. But when I say Kurt Russell's son, it's not Kurt Russell's son is the new Captain America. It's the actor playing the new Captain America.
Kurt Russell exists as Kurt Russell
and as Ego,
in the MCU and as Ego, and his son, not his son in real life, just his son in the show of the Kurt Russell Kurt Russell's son, who is an actor.
Yeah. And I believe...
Did we just write a whole different show there?
Yeah, it could be, yeah. The thing at the end... So the actual episode, it just covers the things I mentioned. It's Falcon serving again with the US military, with the Air Force this time. We see Don Cheadle as War Machine in there, which is nice. Again, not a spoiler, it's like pretty much the opening scene. They have a little back and forth, a bit of dialogue about the world changing. We see Winter Soldier, we see Bucky just to have a normal life. He goes on a date with someone, which is really cute. He's got friends with like this little old man. And there's all this great character stuff. And then at the end, there's this big reveal of the episode, which is basically just a guy on the steps of a building in America just says, right, everyone, here's your new Captain America. And it ends. And I mean, you see the new Captain America, but in my mind, I think of the big official reveals in the MCU as like, is it in Iron Man 2 when there's a big event, and again it's Tony Stark who's over the top, but he flies in and ding, and the fireworks and there's all the dancing girls, and then in Captain America there's a point where he just ends up doing a USO tour and he just goes around drumming up support for the troops and he's doing all the shows, and then this is just a guy, and it's not even like they use one of the characters that we know from the universe who's like a government official or a military man to go. This is just a guy's just like, hey.
I think you're just bitter because you love Cap so much.
I do, though. I am a bit of a Cap fanboy.
And now, from this point on, every time you say Cap, I'm going to say, Kurt Russell's son. Just to piss you off. Just to annoy you. That I think you're thinking about... I might actually let you go on about how much you like him and then go, I didn't know you were such a fan of Kurt Russell's son.
But yeah, it's a good first episode. It's definitely, at the moment, a character piece. There is a really cool action scene involving Winter Soldier. There's a cool action scene involving Falcon. but it's very much about the characters and dealing with fallout of what's happened, both in terms of Cap's gone. You know, the snaps happened. People about the universe, the universe, the world in the MCU is in turmoil. You know, 500 million. What is it? 3.5 billion people disappear, and then 3 or 4 years later, they just suddenly they're back, and it's like, oh, okay, you got to put your society back to how it was.
The stuff that the tiny little bit that we saw in WandaVision.
Yeah, exactly.
In a bigger.
In this, they talk about how there's lots of terrorist groups and military groups who are just basically like, the world needs to go back to how it was in the snap, or you know, borders don't mean anything anymore. You know, the universe is open. We just need to. Yeah. And again, there's these arguments where you're like, yeah, I kind of get that at this point. You know, you've seen aliens come down and attack, of course. Then you lean into some like these conspiracy theories around Captain America, what happened. Okay. I think the official narrative in the MCU is Cap and Iron Man both sacrificed themselves to save the world, but in normal people in this are like, oh, I think the line is, oh, is it true that Cap's on a moon base? Is it true that he's hidden on a moon base? And all that, you know, there's all sorts of really fun stuff, which is great. I can understand maybe mixed reactions in terms of WandaVision was very stylish. It had a voice behind it. It stood out, and at the end it got really epic. And this is a much quieter, slower start to the series after that. But I enjoy it. I like a lot of the. They're not quite ground level heroes, but the closer to Hawkeye than Wanda, you could say.
Yeah,
like we're talking about the different
I think it's
levels.
nice. Yeah, I think it's really nice to have a mix on stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still not over the like Daredevil, you know, in the non MCU TV shows. I just think it was pitched amazingly well. But it's something I've actually just thought about with what you were saying then. Having watched Age of Ultron, there's a fight between Ultron and Vision, which is very reminiscent of the Vision versus Vision at the end of WandaVision. How did I say that without tripping up then? That was a lot of...
You just had a clear vision in your mind.
Thanks, mate. That's years of talking. Could have gone somewhere else with that, but no. Well, yeah, I think that nicely rounds up what we've been doing, what we've been consuming. Yeah,
I think that's a pretty solid entry. Anything else you want to mention, Charlie?
Yeah, guys, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh no, I had a point. Leave this in.